السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أهم الأسس التي أقاموها للصيانة السنة. The most important foundations which the muhaddithun have established to protect the sunnah. So the first thing that they established is al-isnad. وعرفوا الإسناد بقولهم هو حكاية طريق متن الحديث. Now what's the meaning of isnad? So they explained isnad as saying it is relating the pathway of the text of the hadith. So take note, هو حكاية طريق متن الحديث. Relating, it's an action of transmitting. وعرفوا السند بأنه طريق متن الحديث. And sanad, they have explained that to refer to the actual chain of transmission. That means the pathway to the text of the hadith. So you saw there's a difference. The isnad literally mean it comes from Babu If'al, which has the meaning of ta'addi, isn't it? The khususiyat of Babu If'al, one of it is that it has the meaning of that it refers to actually transmitting the way of the text of hadith. So technically, if a person says hada isnadun sahih, it will mean this method that you are transmitting, this transmission of yours is correct. That's the technical meaning, but he'll explain that both of them then started to be used in the same meaning. وَسُمِّيَ سَنَدًا لِاعْتِمَادِ الْحُفَّاظِ عَلَيْهِ فِي الْحُكْمِ بِصِحَّةِ الْحَدِيثِ أَوْ ضَعْفِهِ. Why it was called sanad? It began to be called sanad because the huffaz, the great muhaddithun, they relied upon it in grading the narration, in determining whether the narration is authentic or whether it is weak. أخذا من معنى السند لغة. They derived this here from the literal meaning of the word sunnah, of the word sanad, وهو ما استندت إليه من جدار أو غيره. The literal meaning of sanad is to take support. So if a person takes support, you know, you're reclining on a wall. If that wall was moved away, you would have fallen down. Or you're reclining with a backrest. If it's taken away, you will just fall backwards. So this is the meaning of a sanad, that it's giving you support. So it is where you take support, you rely upon it, whether it's a wall or whether it's anything else, like I said, a backrest. وَالْمُحَدِّثُونَ يَسْتَعْمِلُونَ كُلًّا مِنَ السَّنَدِ وَالْإِسْنَادِ فِي مَوْضِعِ الْآخَرِ. The muhaddithun, they use both words interchangeably. So although isnad, it actually refers to the transmission, to mentioning the pathway of the narrators, they began to use isnad in the meaning of sanad, and then also they use the word sanad in the meaning of isnad. So they treated both words as synonymous to each other. They use both words interchangeably. وَيُعْرَفُ الْمُرَادُ بِالْقَرَائِنِ. The meaning now will depend upon the context. So the literal meaning of qara'in is external factors. Here you translate it as the context. You just take into consideration the context of the statement, and from there you will understand what they mean when they're using the word sanad and what they mean when they're using the word isnad. قال الحافظ ابن حجر ولكون الإسناد يعلم به الموضوع من غيره كانت معرفته من فروض الكفاية. After giving the definition, he now quotes the ruling about learning isnad. He's saying, he quotes it from Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, that because a sanad and isnad, it is used to determine what is fabricated from what is acceptable from others. It's used to determine and differentiate what is baseless from what has some basis. كانت معرفته من فروض الكفاية. Learning it, knowing about asanid, is a farz al-kifaya. And for this farz al-kifaya, it's a very few selected people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen. A person has to have that isti'adad, he has to have that memory, he has to have that interest. So it's very few people in the ummah who can actually fulfill this furud al-kifaya. So if you are learning about asanid, and if you are studying the different narrators, then this is a very, very great favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you. وهذا الإسناد لم يكن يسأل عنه إلا بعد وقوع الفتنة. Regarding the origin of it, so he says the sanad, people would not ask for it. they would not ask for your dalil or your proof or your sanad, except after the fitan took place, like he mentioned when discussing about the origin or the from where fabrication started. It was in the year 40. So he says, إلا بعد وقوع الفتنة وبروز النزاعات, when these arguments started to become manifest, وظهور الزنادقة ومن شابههم في الإغارة على السنة المطهرة, and the appearance of the Zanadiqa, and you explained that the Zanadiqa, it either means atheist or it either means a munafiq. And those who resemble them, when they started with their attacks on the pristine Sunnah. قال التابعي الجليل أبو العالي رفيع بن مهران الرياحي البصري: كنا نسمع الرواية عن أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ونحن بالبصرة، فما نرضى حتى نركب إلى المدينة فنسمعها من أفواههم. So this great tabi'i, he said that we used to hear a transmission from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum in Basra. So that means it's a tabi'i who is relating it to us. But we would not be content with that. We would rather travel all the way to Medina Munawwara just so that we could hear it directly from the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. So when you read about al-Rihla fi Talab al-Hadith, you'll find this actually it's started from Sahaba radiallahu anhum. That Sahaba radiallahu anhum themselves would travel to hear from the direct source. And they taught this to the tabi'in, and that is why this here became the culture, it became the norm amongst the tabi'un, that they would travel just so that they can hear it directly from the person who is quoting it. And then that is which gave rise to this whole concept of sanadul ali, where throughout time, right up until today, people will actually travel just so that they can get a shorter sanad. That now, if you think of it, between us and the Prophet ﷺ, 1,400 years. So imagine having a sanad between you and the Prophet ﷺ with 16, 17, 18 links. That's something great. It's worth it to adjust your whole schedule, to take whatever sacrifices it entails and go and read the book, even though you might have read the book so many times, but just so that you can get it via a shorter sanad. وقال التابعي الجليل هشام بن عروة: إذا حدثك رجل بحديث فقل عمن هذا. Hisham ibn Urwa, he would say that whenever anyone tells you a hadith, then ask him, Amman hadha, from who did you hear this? So if you have to put this advice in today's times, if anyone passes to you a hadith on social media, if anyone tells you a hadith, ask him, where's your source? That in which book does this hadith come? But nevertheless, in that time, because they used to be basing it on asanid, so he would say that you must ask the person, Amman hada, فَإِنَّ الرَّجُلَ يُحَدِّثُ عَنْ آخَرْ دُونَهُ فِي الْإِتْقَانِ وَالصِّدْقِ. Because many times a person would be quoting from another person who is inferior to him in his precision and even in his trustworthiness. So you might be thinking that this is a very great scholar who is quoting this narration to you, I can accept it. Meantime, his source, the person from who he narrated it from, that person was not so precise, or that person was not so trustworthy. Maybe the sheikh, he just looked at the outward. Maybe he did not know certain issues about that person, and that is why he is trusting that person and relying upon him. But that person is much more inferior, and it now changes the whole status of the narration. وقال الحافظ الجوال والرحال أبو سعد السمعاني رحمه الله في كتابه أدب الإملاء والاستملاء. So Alama Sam'ani rahimahullah, he mentioned in his book of his Adab al-Imla wal-Istimla, وَأَلْفَاظُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ لَا بُدَّ لَهَا مِنَ النَّقْلِ. It is essential that we transmit the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has to be passed on from generation to generation. وَلَا تُعْرَفُ صِحَّتُهَا إِلَّا بِالْإِسْنَادِ الصَّحِيحِ. But we cannot know the authenticity of it except through a sahih sanad. والصحة في الإسناد لا تعرف إلا برواية الثقة عن الثقة والعدل عن العدل. And the authenticity of a chain cannot be known unless you know the caliber of the narrators. That it must be a reliable person quoting from a reliable person, a trustworthy person quoting from a trustworthy person. ثم ساق بإسناده إلى زنيج محمد بن عمرو الرازي شيخ الإسلام sorry, Shaykh al-Imam Muslim wa Abi Dawud wa Ibn Majah. So he quotes from this teacher of three of the authors of the Sahih Sitta. قال سمعت بهز بن أسد العمي البصري المتوفى بعيد سنة 200 رحمه الله تعالى الحافظ الثقة الثبت يقول إذا ذكر له الإسناد الصحيح هذه شهادات العدول المرضيين بعضهم على بعض. When a narrator is saying that this person quoted to me, who's quoting from that person, who's quoting from that person, then he's giving a testimony. So he says that these are very reliable and pleasant witnesses who are giving testimony against another person. It is giving testimony by saying that this person most definitely he said it. وَإِذَا ذُكِرَ لَهُ الْإِسْنَادُ فِيهِ شَيْءٍ. And when so that is when it's an authentic sanad. When the sanad is not authentic, then they say هذا فيه عهدة. That means that this year now the responsibility is off my shoulders. By telling you my source, now it's no more my responsibility. By telling you who quoted it to me, now if you want to go research about this person, if he's a wada', then I'm not responsible. I just told you that this is the person who told it to me, irrespective of his status, irrespective of his trustworthiness. By me telling you that this is the person who quoted it to me, or this person is quoting from that person, and now I am no more responsible for it. ويقول لو أن لرجل على رجل عشرة دراهم. If one person owes another person a meager sum of money, like just 10 dirhams, ثم جحدهم. But now the debtor, he comes and he says, no, that I did not take this loan, I don't owe you anything. لم يستطع أخذها منه إلا بشاهدين عدلين. The creditor, he will not have any legal resource unless he has two trustworthy people to bear testimony that yes, most definitely that person took a sum of 10 dirhams from him and therefore he needs to pay it back. So فَدِينُ اللَّهِ, this here it comes as دين الله. فَدِينُ اللَّهِ أَحَقُّ أَن يُؤْخَذَ فِيهِ بِالْعُدُولِ. In the footnote, Shaykh Abd Abu Ghuddah, he explains how others have used, instead of فَدِينُ اللَّهِ, they used another word there and they said فَبَيَّنَ اللَّهِ. So nevertheless, فَدِينُ اللَّهِ أَحَقُّ أَن يُؤْخَذَ فِيهِ بِالْعُدُولِ. So the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more deserving that it should be taken from those who are very, very trustworthy. قال تابعي الجليل محمد بن سيرين إن هذا العلم دين فانظروا عمن تأخذون دينكم. That verily this knowledge is your deen, so look from who you are taking your deen from. أهمية الإسناد في الدين, the importance of a sanad in our religion. الإسناد خصيصة فاضلة من خصائص الأمة المحمدية. And isnad, it's an outstanding speciality from amongst the specialities of this ummah. لم يؤتها أحد من الأمم قبلها. No other nation before this nation was given a sanad. وهو من الدين بموقع عظيم ومكان رفيع. It holds a very lofty place and a very high pedestal in deen. تكاثرت في بيان شأنه وأهميته وفضله كلمات العلماء. There are an abundance of statements of the scholars which speaks about the nature of a sanad, the importance of a sanad, and actually even the virtues of a sanad. وتعددت وتنوعت أقوالهم في تعظيم أمره. There's many statements of theirs which mentions to you the greatness of a sanad, and mentioned in different ways. تنوعت, in different styles they expressed it. ومن خيرها وأدقها تشخيصا لموقع الإسناد كلمة الإمام عبد الله ibn al-Mubarak رضي الله عنه. So there's lots of different statements, many different sentiments of the scholars, but the best and the most precise statement that will demonstrate to you the status of isnad are the words of Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak. Alama Khatib rahimahullah, he has quoted the statement of Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak in Tarikh Baghdad. Others also quoted it in their books. And Abdan, from Abdan, who is the student of Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, قال سمعت عبد الله ibn al-Mubarak يقول الإسناد عندي من الدين. That is, isnad is actually part and parcel of deen. It's like an important pillar of deen. وَلَوْلَا الْإِسْنَادُ لَقَالَ مَنْ شَاءَ مَا شَاءَ. Had it not been for a sanad, anyone would have said whatever he wants to and then attributed it to the Prophet ﷺ. It would have been so easy to fabricate. A person would very easily be able to make up his own thing. وَلَكِنْ إِذَا قِيلَ لَهُ مَنْ حَدَّثَكَ بَقِيَ. But now because we have this concept of sanad, when the person is told that, okay, you are quoting this here, who told it to you? Then baqiya, then he remains wonderstruck. So if you look in the footnotes, baqiya sakitan mufhama, that he just remains there standing silent. Mufhama is, you know, when a person has no answer to something. If you tell a person something and he doesn't have any answer, you like caught him on its paw of the moment that he didn't know how to respond. So that's where you call it, the word ifham is used with the ha. أو بقي ساكتا مبهوتا منقطعا, or you will just remain like silent, awestruck, you won't know what to say. So Shaykh Abd Abu Ghuddah rahmallah, then he explains that this year it's a methodology in which the Arabs and the very early Muslims in the 2nd and the 3rd and the 4th century, they would use a word and then they would drop off the remaining portion of the statement. Why? Because they would then rely on the audience. The audience would understand what he said. So then he explains that how some people made mistakes, etc. But because we need to complete at least till page 154, so we just continue. قال عبدان ذكر ابن المبارك هذا. So the student of Ibn al-Mubarak, he says that when did Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak rahmallah mention this here? He mentioned it عند ذكر الزنادقة وما يضعون من الأحاديث, when he was speaking about them, Zanadiqa, and the narrations that they fabricated. وقال ابن المبارك أيضا بيننا وبين القوم أي المبتدع والكذب القوائم. Ibn al-Mubarak rahmallah would also say, between us and between the people, that means between the innovators and the liars, are these pillars. What are these pillars? يعني الإسناد. وقال سفيان الثوري الإسناد صلاح المؤمن. Sufyan Thawri rahmallah would say that isnad is the weapon of a mu'min. فإذا لم يكن معه صلاح فبأي شيء يقاتل. If a person does not have any weapon, how will he fight? You go in a battle, you don't have a weapon, how are you going to fight? So you want to come into the academic circle, you have to have a sanad. وقال الأوزاعي ما ذهاب العلم إلا ذهاب الإسناد. That knowledge will not yet metaphorically use the word evaporate. Like, you know, because evaporate, how it goes up. So knowledge will not cease to exist except when asanid cease to exist. وقال الإمام الجليل والمحدث الناقد النبيل شعبة بن الحجاج أبو بستام الواسطي البصري. This great scholar, you know, is such a great muhaddith. شعبة, he mentioned كل حديث ليس فيه حدثنا أو أخبرنا فهو خل وبقل. Every narration which does not have حدثنا and أخبرنا, meaning it does not have a sanad, فهو خل وبقل, it is vinegar and vegetables. So these are cheap commodities, so therefore it's a metaphorical way of saying أي رخيص لا قيمة له ولا يتعلق به لفقده الإسناد. That narration loses all its worth. It has now لا قيمة له. It becomes useless. Why? Because it does not have a sanad. وفي رواية أخرى كل حديث ليس فيه حدثنا فهو مثل الرجل في فلاة معه بعير بغير زمام. That every narration which does not have حدثنا, which does not have a sanad, it is like a person who's in an open space of land. He has a camel and that camel has no reins. It does not have the camel halter. So that means that camel will run and flee from him so easily. For him to keep up with the camel will become so difficult. So speaking about the status of Shu'bah, he says, وَشُعْبَةُ هَذَا أول من فتش بالعراق عن أمر المحدثين. He was the very first person who in Iraq who would start to analyze and inspect and examine the condition of the muhaddithun. وجانب الضعفاء والمتروكين. Then he stayed away and he abandoned the narrations of those who were weak and those who were liars. Liars, matruk is basically when a person speaks lies, then they term him as a matruk. قال الإمام أحمد فيه huwa ummatun wahdahu fi hadha ash-sha'n. He is like an entire ummah in the field of hadith. The amount of contribution, the work that he has done, it's like a whole nation it takes to do that amount of work. وقال الثوري فيه أمير المؤمنين في الحديث. Sufyan Thawri rahimahullah described him as being an Amir al-Mu'minin, being the leader, being like the absolute highest stage from all the muhaddithun. وقال الشافعي لولا شعبة ما عرف الحديث بالعراق. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah has said that had it not been for Shu'bah, hadith would have not been known in Iraq. He is the one who taught hadith in Iraq and also preserved the hadith in Iraq. So he gets the credit of keeping hadith in that part of the world. وكان التابعي الجليل الإمام محمد بن شهاب الزهري إذا حدث أتى بالإسناد. Ibn Shihab Zuhri rahimahullah, when he would transmit a narration, then he would quote the sanad and he would say, لا يصلح أن يرقى السطح إلا بدرجه. You cannot go to the roof except if you use the staircase. You're saying, is this the same Shu'bah as in Imam Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash? So I'm not understanding. No, this is a different person. It's a different. Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash is a different person, and Shu'bah is a different person. I'm not understanding the question. Sorry. So Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash is generally remembered as the one who was very harsh. He would, scream at the muhaddithun, the students, when they would come to him, and he had this, like his personality was that Allah Ta'ala created people with different temperaments. So his temperament was in that way that he would. He was very, very harsh in nature. وكان تابعي الجليل الإمام محمد بن شهاب الزهري إذا حدث أتى بالإسناد يقول لا يصلح أن يرقى السطح إلا بدرجه. If you want to climb to the roof, you need a staircase to climb to the roof. إلى غير هذا وذاك من الأقوال الكثيرة, etc. Basically, all these other statements that you have التي وردت عن التابعين وتابعيهم في أهمية الإسناد ولزوم الاستناد إليه, which is transmitted about from the tabi'in and those who followed them on the importance of a sanad and the importance of absolutely relying on the sanad. وفي سياقة كل خبر أو أثر, and mentioning every hadith, what a sanad or even an athar. In the footnotes, Shaykh Abd Abu Ghuddah, he clarifies a point. Probably, maybe in certain societies, it might not be the case, but nevertheless, we'll just go through it because he said that it's an important point. He's saying that وَمِمَّا يَنْبَغِي التَّنْبِيهُ عَلَيْهِ هُنَا أَنَّهُ قَدْ تَوَهَّمَ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ أَنَّ ذِكْرَ السَّنَدِ مَعَ الْحَدِيثِ أَوْ الْخَبَرِ يَدُلُّ عَلَى تَقْوِيَتِهِ. That many people, they have this false notion. The minute a person quotes a sanad, that already denotes that it is authentic narration. So by simply quoting a sanad, people think, because now in today's times, you don't get, you get a very, basically, literally a handful of scholars who are willing to go and look at every narrator. Even those who do takhasus fil hadith, they don't really have this interest of going and researching every narrator. So he's saying that many people, they get this false notion that you're taking a name and then taking another name and saying that that person narrated from that person taking a name. He's saying that people just assume that it now denotes that whatever they're quoting is authentic. But وَالْحَالُ أَنَّهُ لَا يَلْزَمُ هَذَا. The reality is that this here is not the case. فَإِنَّ السَّنَدَ يَدُلُّ إِمَّا عَلَى تَقْوِيَةِ الْخَبْرِ أَوْ عَلَى ضَعْفِهِ. He say that the sanad merely denotes upon the status of a narration. Now the status could either be that the narration is strong or it could be weak. It does not necessarily mean that just because you're quoting a sanad, so therefore it is authentic. ويقضي بقبوله أو الرد على حسب اشتماله على شروط الصحة والقبول أو عدم اشتماله عليها أو على بعضها. In conformity to how much it conforms to the conditions of accepting the narration, or how much it lacks the fulfilling the conditions of acceptance. فَقُمْ مِنْهُ عَلَى ذُكِّرٍ. So they say they take note of this here. فَإِنَّهُ قَدْ يُغْلَطُ فِيهِ أَوْ يُغَالَطُ. In our times, what happens is that when a person quotes a book, so even if it's a book which a person never heard of, you don't even know if that book exists. But the minute they quote a book, take a book's name and say that it comes in this book, people now think it is authentic. So even if they post something on social media, they might take a book, and that book was written no muhaddis has ever certified that book and mentioned that everything is authentic in that book. But people, they just assume because they took a book's name and there's the page number and a reference, so that means whatever is being quoted is authentic. So no, it does not mean that because a person is telling you his source, it is the default is that it's authentic. No, now you need to go and research. He's telling you that source, so now you need to determine the authenticity of that source. Then Shaykh Abd Abu Ghuddah, he says that I explained all of this in great detail in my book Al-Isnad min ad-Din, and also in the footnotes on Al-Juwabat al-Fadila of Mullah Abdul Hayy Lakanawi rahimahullah ta'ala. اشتراط الإسناد في تلقي جميع العلوم الإسلامية وغيرها. It's conditional that there has to be a sanad in obtaining any of the Islamic sciences. So not only hadith. If you're studying Nahwa, you must have at least, in every field, you must have at least one sanad. So in Nahwa, generally in Darul Ulums, they don't, of course, there might be sanad because, you know, your Asatidah studied in the Darul Ulum and they studied, they were Asatidah who have also studied and they qualified and graduated from their Darul Ulums. So there must be a sanad, but it's not told to the students. So therefore, then we should go and read books, read mutun, just so that we can get a sanid in, at least in every field, the basic mutun, we have a sanad in it. So he's saying in Islamic sciences, and not only in Islamic sciences, beyond Islamic sciences, they earlier scholars, and he'll explain it now, earlier scholars would actually be strict that there must be a sanad. وقد نشأ عن اهتمام المحدثين بالإسناد ووضوح أهميته في تلقي المنقول أن اشترط الإسناد في تلقي سائر العلوم الإسلامية. That the concern and the care that the muhaddithun gave for sanad, thus gave a rise that that the sanad was now made conditional for obtaining any of the Islamic sciences. So the care that the muhaddithun gave, and by clearly mentioning the importance in receiving that which has been transmitted, that means manqul from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that gave rise that anishtarat al-isnad fi talaqqi sa'ir al-ulum al-islamiyya, that now any of the Islamic sciences is attained through a sanad. كالتفسير, so in tafsir also we have sanad, al-fiqh, in tarikh, and even in the books of rijal, in the books of the narrators, wal-ansab, even in the books on the lineage of the earlier Arabs, wal-lugha, wal-nahu, wal-adab, wal-sha'r, basically in every possible Islamic science, even in wal-hikayat, anecdotes, then too إسناد is quoted حتى دخل في سياق الكلمة الواحدة من أخبار الحمقى والمغفلين. So earlier scholars, they wrote books on explaining incidents of those who would do silly actions and they would be very negligent. وأخبار المضحكين, and actually those who became laughing stocks. ونوادر الطفيلين, and the rare incidents of those who were senior but they acted like children. So they wrote books like this here, how a person in his 40s acted like a small child, how a person became the laughing stock in society, how another person was regarded as a very silly and a foolish person, and how another person was regarded as very like a mughaffal, really neglectful, not concerned about anything. So independent books are written about this. In those books also, when mentioning all of those anecdotes and mentioning those incidents, some of them are actually out of humor, like it's like what we will call jokes. Even for that they quoted asanid. كما دخل في سياق الكلمة الواحدة في التفسير. He's saying sometimes just to explain one word in tafsir, they would quote an entire sanad and say you'll find the siyar repeatedly over and over in the tafsir of Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. You know, the tafsir of Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, it became like the main source of all the tafsir that were written thereafter. And therefore, if you're limited on funds and you just want to invest in one tafsir, then the best is that you invest in this particular tafsir, because it became the main source and everything is quoted what? As sanad. وكما تراه في كتاب الخطيب البغدادي, like you will see in this book of Ulama Khatib rahimahullah, التطفيل وحكايات الطفيليين. So where people acted like small babies, elders acted like small babies, they wrote books on this here. والبخلاء, very stingy people. And the books of Ibn al-Jawzi, أخبار الحمقى والمغفلين. the incidents of those who were humqa, so they were silly. And yeah, when they're talking about silly, so whether it was naturally silly or whether it was naturally silly or so naturally silly, maybe their minds like they were too short. I don't know if you all use that in your societies. They were a little bit backwards. And this here is based on physiognomy, that they look at the outward body features, and from there they can know the internal state of a person. If you read these books, you'll see how they base it, that because of the shape of his, of one limb of his, that is how they concluded this. And it's actually a very interesting point, that they say that it's permissible to see the hands, the face, hands, and feet of the opposite gender when going for marriage. Why? Because just from the face, hands, and feet, you will be able to tell the entire personality, everything about a person. So that is how they wrote all of these books. Let me just check these two questions here. So the name, Tafsir of Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Then there's this whole long discussion. In fact, you do it whether Tafsir Ibn Kathir is a condensed version of Tafsir Tabari, or whether it's not a condensed, because many scholars will say that Tafsir Ibn Kathir is the best, but then it's a very, very long discussion whether Allama Ibn Kathir, rahmallah, he actually sat with Tafsir Tabari and went and decided what to take from there, and like his selection, or whether it's an independent Tafsir, etc. So that is why it's best to we prefer that you first get the tafsir of Ibn Jarir, especially if you completed the Dars al-Nizami. Then first tafsir, if you're very short on funds, then first tafsir Tabari, thereafter tafsir of Ibn Kathir, then only third place, then you get Ruh al-Ma'ani. And then after that, you can get, if you know Urdu well, then you get Bayan al-Quran, and then you get Ma'arif al-Quran, then you go to all the other tafasir. So, and then وَأَخْبَارِ الْأَذْكِيَةِ وَاللُّقَطَ فِي حِكَايَاتِ الصَّالِحِينَ. So all these kind of books. وكتاب ذم الهوى فتراه في هذه الكتب يسوق سندا طوله 3 أسطر أو أكثر من أجل نقل جملة صغيرة أو كلمة واحدة عن قائلها. So you will find in these kind of books, what are they mentioning? They're telling you anecdotes, they're telling you humor, they're telling you about some interesting incidents of the pious, maybe some narrations from those who are very wise, but they're quoting lengthy asanid, which extends over 2, 3, or even more lines. Just for that small line, they're quoting so much. Like, a small tweet, for that you're quoting the whole Sunnah for it. So this is the extent that they went. So there's 2 ways in which we can appreciate the work of this pious. The one is that in today's times, we should make it a practice that we quote from books which has asanid. Like, we try to go back to the books which have asanid. So in anything that we quote, we go to books which has the sanad, so that in this way you're appreciating the effort. And then the second is that, so then even if you are quoting, like now say your Jummah lecture, or if you're quoting, maybe you're giving a lecture to the awam, then of course there you don't go give references and things like that, because you're talking to awam, so you talk to people ala qadri uqulihim. But when you are speaking in a lesson, or when you are giving a dars, then you make it a habit to quote your references. And if you are giving a lesson to postgraduates, then at times you even quote the whole sanad, so that you can keep alive the speciality of the ummah. That if you're teaching to postgraduates and they even you're not quoting asanid, then literally you'll see Shaykh Abd Abu Ghuddah later on, he complains about the condition today. That people, they become so tired and they become so lazy, they don't even want to hear the sanad. واعتذر رحمه الله في كتاب اللطيف. Then say Allama Khatib rahimahullah, so in all his books, he's writing everywhere the sanad, he's writing the sanad. But then he says that in one book now he couldn't write the sanad. So al-hath ala hifd al-ilm wa dhikr kibar al-huffaz. So because he's writing a small booklet, so he didn't want to put the sanad بدافع الاختصار وعدم الإطالة. So he made sure that he mentions his excuse that I'm not going to be mentioning the asanid just because I want to keep it concise. I don't want this book to become too lengthy. So he says in the 7th chapter that لما كان المقصود من هذا الكتاب التحريض على الحفظ لم أتشاغل بالإسناد ولم أطل. He says that since the whole objective of this book is to encourage and motivate people to memorize, that's the objective. I did not engage in mentioning all the asanid and make it too lengthy. But he said, despite this here, ومع هذا فقد ساق في جل تراجم الحفاظ أخبارهم بالإسناد منه إليهم. He's mentioning, he's not going to mention the asanid. He's giving his excuse, but it was part of their nature for things which we would consider as irrelevant. Even for that, they made sure to give their sanad. So that is why even in today's times, like I said, that when you give a Jummah bayan, even if you are quoting an incident, that you don't have to mention the source in a lecture, but if at least you know the source in the back of your mind. If after your lecture someone comes and asks you that you mentioned this incident, then you must know that even if it's, you can see here for incidents they had asanid. So like that, even for your incidents, I read it in the book of Al-Ashraf al-Tanwi. No, I read this in that scholar's book. No, I read that in that scholar's book. So for every statement you say, you must be able to back it up. And if that's the case in giving a normal lecture, then all the more if you are now giving a dars in fiqh, if you're mentioning a fatwa, if you're mentioning a legal ruling, you must know your references. نماذج من اهتمام السلف بالإسناد ولو لكلمة واحدة. So here he's going to give examples to show how much care the pious predecessors had for sanad, even if it was for just one letter. So just to explain to you what one word is, they will quote it with the whole sanad. So he says, وإليك نماذج من اهتمام السلف بالإسناد ولو للكلمة الواحدة. Here under some examples of the concern which the pious predecessors had in quoting the sanad, even if it is for explaining one word. Like for example, now this word heen comes in the Quran. So now to explain وَمَتَاعٌ إِلَى حِين, what's the meaning of this word heen? So he's showing you from Tafsir al-Tabari that look, القول في تأويل قوله تعالى ذكر ومتاع إلى حين. He needs to explain what this word حين means. So he says اختلف أهل التأويل في تأويل ذلك فقال بعضهم ولكم فيها بلاغ إلى الموت. So some scholars, they explain that حين means death. Now, to mention to you which scholars mention that حين, the meaning of حين refers to death. He says, حدثني موسى بن هارون قال حدثنا عمرو بن حماد قال حدثنا أثبات عن السدي. Can you see? So he's quoting the whole sanad just to tell you that حين يقول بلاغ إلى الموت. To tell you that point, he quoted the whole sanad. Now look at the next example. It's 2 lines. حدثني يونس قال أخبرنا ابن وهب قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن مهدي عن إسرائيل عن إسماعيل السدي قال حدثني من سمع ابن عباس ومتاع إلى حين قال الحياة. Can you see? So again mentioning it now with another sanad. Now mentioning again a third sanad. وحدثني المثنى بن إبراهيم قال حدثنا أبو حذيفة قال حدثنا شبل عن ابن أبي نجيح عن مجاهد ومتاع إلى حين قال إلى يوم القيامة إلى انقطاع الدنيا. So for everything he mentioned the sanad. Then he says that other people, they have taken the meaning of حين to mean a appointed time. So he says that who is this here? حدثت عن عمار بن الحسن قال حدثنا عبد الله بن أبي جعفر عن أبيه عن الربيع. So the point is trying to show, look, they're quoting the sanad just to show this point. وقال ابن أبي الدنيا في كتابه الصمت. So Ibn Abi Dunya in his book الصمت, like to show you a very simple statement. He says حدثنا أحمد بن إبراهيم قال حدثنا أبو داود الطيالسي عن شعبة قال أخبرني عمارة بن أبي حفصة سمع أبا مجلس يقول قال رجل لقوم عليكم بالصدق فإنه نجاة. Now this is like very simple advice, isn't it? That be truthful, inculcate within yourself trustworthiness, because in that lies your salvation. But for that very simple advice, he quoted the whole sanad for it. وساق حافظ الخطيب البغدادي رحمه الله في كتابه التطفيل وحكايات الطفيليين وأخبارهم ونوادر كلامهم وأشعارهم. So in this book of his في باب ذكر ما كان يسمى به الطفيل في الجاهلية الخبر التالي بسنده لتفسير كلمة واحدة. So to explain the one word, أخبرنا علي بن أبي علي قال حدثنا محمد بن عبد الرحيم المازني قال أخبرنا ابن بكير قال أخبرنا ابن كتيبة قال الضيفا. So now you have to explain what's this word الضيفا. So for that he brought this whole, he's quoting how many 4 names just so that he can tell you what's the meaning of ضيفا. الذي يجيء مع الضيف ولم يدعى. That person who in South Africa, in Afrikaans we call him a samchakom, that he comes with a guest meantime he was not invited. So you invited one person and someone just comes with him, that person is called a ضيفا سمخكم. وقال فيه أيضا في باب في ذكر من طفل من الأكابر والأشراف وأهل العلم والأدب, that those who acted immaturely from the seniors, notable people, scholars, and so respected people in society, sometimes they do something which will be like which will be something which is immature. Now look at this, the length of the sanad, but just to mention that أخبرنا الحسن بن الحسين بن عباس النعالي, first name. Then قال أخبرنا أبو الفرج علي بن الحسين الأصبهاني قال أخبرني أحمد بن عبد العزيز قال حدثني الحسن بن علي قال حدثنا علي بن سعيد الكندي قال سمعت أبا بكر بن عياش قال حدثني من رأى ذا الرمة الشاعر المشهور طفيليا يأتي العرسات. So can you see, just to mention that point, that you have this person here, a very notable poet, and he would come for urusat. It means he would gate crash for the ta'am of the walima. He was not invited, but he would go there for those dawats. He would gate crash to go eat. So he's mentioning that, he mentioned his whole sanad for it. وأمثال هذين الخبرين مما طال سنده وقصر خبره كثير في كتاب التطفيل وغيره. He's saying examples like this, where they're mentioning anecdotes, they're mentioning incidents, they're telling you stories, but for that they are quoting the sanad and lengthy asanid. For a very small incident. Look, the sanad itself was how many lines? 3 lines there. But the point that you wanted to mention is only half a line. So طال سنده وقصر خبره. For a very small point, they mention such a lengthy sanad. That's the concern which they gave and the care which they gave for a sanad. وقد ساق الحافظ ابن الجوزي في كتابه أخبار الأذكياء الخبر التالي بهذا الإسناد. Now he's telling you in this book of his, which mentions the incidents of intelligent people. Now look at this sanad, 4.5 lines. So أخبرنا عبد الرحمن بن محمد قال أخبرنا أحمد بن علي بن ثابت قال أخبرني أبو الوليد الحسن بن محمد الدربندي قال so he wasn't from Durban, that is why I call الدربندي. You can see if you're from Durban, then you can call yourself الدربندي, you will resemble one of the people of the past. قال أخبرنا محمد بن أبي بكر الوراق قال حدثنا أبو أحمد علي بن عبد الله المروزي قال حدثنا شهاب بن الحسن العكبري قال سمعت الأسمعي يقول. So سمعت أبان بن جرير. So this is the point that he wants to show you, that look at the sanad and still not finished. So already 4 lines. قال المهلب بن أبي الصفرة يعجبني أن أرى عقل الكريم زائدا على لسانه ولا يعجبني أن أرى لسانه زائدا على عقله. So you can dissect the statement later on. He's saying that I'm astonished, I get astonished when I see that the mind and the mental ability of a notable person, of a generous person, is more than his tongue. That means he's thinking more and speaking less. ولا يعجبني أن أرى لسانه زائدا على عقله. It no more amazes me when I see that he's talking more than he is able to think and comprehend. فانظر كيف ترى هؤلاء الأئمة الحفاظ الساقوا من أجل الكلمة الواحدة أو الكلمتين ولو كانت حكمة السطرين والثلاثة والأربعة من الإسناد. Shaykh Abd Abu Ghuddah رحمه الله is saying, just look at these great حفاظ, senior scholars, to mention just 1 or 2 words, even if it is some just small advisors. They mention 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, which composes of their sanad. لِيُورِدُ الْكَلِمَةَ مَوْرِدَهَا عَنْ قَائِلِهَا, just so that they can mention the source of that statement. فَقَدْ كَانَ السَّنَدُ عِنْدَهُمْ عُمْدَةَ الْأَحْكَامِ عُمْدَةُ الْكَلَامِ. So he says that the sanad, according to, they would regard the sanad to be the basis of the statement. So the sanad was the basis of the statement. وطريق التلقي والقبول إذا صح المنقول. It was the way for them to obtain and accept a narration if it was, or a statement if it was authentic. They would be able to determine it's authentic or not through the sanad. وبهذه الأمثلة وأمثالها تتضح لك قيمة الإسناد عند الإسناف. But these few examples and other examples which resembles these, you can now, it becomes very apparent for you to see the worth and the value of the sanad according to the earlier scholars. وَشِدَّةُ التَّوَثُّقِ عِنْدَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فِي الْكَلِمَةِ, and to what great extent the scholars would go, the Muslimun would go to make sure, even if one statement is transmitted from the Prophet ﷺ or any scholar, or even if it was from a linguistic, from a poet, from someone who is engaged in literal work, in that too they would make sure that they quote the sanad. فلا بد في الكلمة المنقولة من الإسناد الصحيح لتأخذ حكمها ووضع المرسوم. It was necessary that the statement which is being transmitted has to have a very accurate sanad. It had to have a correct sanad. Then only it would get prominence. Then only it would be accepted. ولهذا قرروا القاعدة المشهورة في أول كتب آداب البحث والمناظرة. It's because of this that they established a very famous principle in the books on the methods on the ethics of debating. That when you want to debate with another person, then always remember this here. So one of the principles is in kunta naqilan fasihha. If you are quoting someone from something from someone else, then make sure that you know that it's authentically proven from that person. You shouldn't be falsely attributing something to someone else. And how do you fulfill this? By knowing the sanad, or by in our context, by knowing the source. Or مدعيا فالدليل. If you are claiming something, then you need to give proof. You cannot just be saying something with no substance. ونظرا إلى موقع الإسناد حتى في المرويات الأدبية، انتقد القاضي أبو الفرج المعافى بن زكريا النهرواني في مقدمة كتابه الجليس الصالح الكافي والأنيس الناصح الشافي. If you're feeling lonely, you can see the title of this kitab, الجليس الصالح الكافي. That you can get this book is a companion for you. So if ever you're feeling lonely, you don't have any friends, you don't have anyone to talk to, then just take this kitab here. الذي أسسه على ما أشار إليه بقوله. So he's saying that why he wrote this here, so he bases it on فلاح لي أن أنشئ كتابا أضمنه أنواعا من الجد الذي يستفاد ويعتمد عليه. In this book, it became apparent for me that I will write a book which I will add into it all those serious stuff. So jid is the opposite of joke. So serious stuff, yustafadu wa yu'tamal alayh, from where you can get benefit from and which you could rely upon. So on the one hand, I'll be mentioning things which are very serious, and on the other hand, وَمِنَ الْهَزْلِ فِي أَثْنَائِهِ, there will also be humor in this book, مَا يَسُرُّ اسْتِمَاعُهُ وَيُسْتَرَاحِ إِلَيْهِ, that you'll become happy to listen to it, and you'll also be relaxed when reading it. So in this kind of a book, he criticizes Mubarrid, because Mubarrid wrote this book Asmahu al-Kamil. He wrote this book which is called al-Kamil. إذ أورد فيه كثيرا من الأخبار والقصص التي لا إسناد لها. So he's criticizing him that, look, he's mentioning stories, but he's not telling us the source of his stories. He's not telling us the sanad for his stories. So can you see how important the sanad was? That even if he's telling stories, he's telling you incidents. Then too, because he didn't tell you his sanad, he becomes deserving of criticism. So he says, وعمل أبو العباس محمد بن يزيد النحوي المبرد كتابه الذي سماه الكامل. That he wrote this book of his which is called Al-Kamil. So take note that the meaning is Al-Kamil. You know what's the meaning of Kamil, like it's complete, because they're going to criticize the name. وَضَمَّنَهُ أَخْبَارًا وَقِصَصًا لَا إِسْنَادَ لِكَثِيرٍ مِنْهَا. He includes in it many incidents, many anecdotes, which many of which do not have any sanad. وَأَوْدَعَهُ مِنْ اشْتِقَاقِ اللُّغَةِ وَشَرْحِهَا وَبِيَانِ أَسْرَارِهَا وَفِقْهِهَا ما يأتي مثله به لسعة علمه. He goes into lots of linguistic details, mentioning the derivatives of the words, explaining the meaning of the word, delving into the intricacies of the word. All of that that ما يأتي مثله به لسعة علمه. No one could have mentioned it like how he mentioned it. Why? Because Mubarrid, he had such vast knowledge. وقوة فهمه, his understanding abilities were so strong. ولطيف فكرته, he had in-depth thought. قريحته, he was of pure disposition. ومن جلي النحو والإعراب وغامضهما ما يقل وجود من يسد فيه مسدة. When going into the simple and the more intricate, more complex of issues of nahwa, there will not be anyone, it will be very hard to find someone who can fill his shoes. But إلا أن كتابه هذا مقصر عما وسمه به. This book of his falls short in what he has described it as. واختاره من ترجمته, and what he chose as the title, that he chose the title to be al-Kamil. وغير لائق به ما آثره من تسميته. It was not suitable what he chose to be the name of the book. فحطه بهذا عن منزلة لولا ما صنعه كانت حاصلة له. He's saying that it pushed him down from this action of his pushed him down, that if he did not do this here by quoting things without the asanid, then he would have got a higher state. So كانت حاصلة له, he would have obtained that higher stage, but because he didn't mention the asanid, so therefore it pushed him down and he did not attain the high stage. Subhanallah, ما أبين انتفاع هذا الكتاب عن نسبه وأشد منافاته للقبه. So can you see that this book is not complete just because the author did not mention the asanid. وقال الإمام ابن الجوزي في مقدمة كتابه اللقط في حكايات الصالحين مخطوط. So this book was still in manuscript from, that in this book of his he says وألفت في هذا الكتاب. So look at the name of the kitab, like he's taking, is giving a few selected incidents of the pious people. وألفت في هذا الكتاب من عيون الحكايات ما يزيد على 500 حكاية. In this book there's 500 odd incidents. وأحببت أن تكون مسندة. I love that all of these incidents must have a sanad. فقد أنبأني علي بن عبيد الله قال سمعت عبد الله بن عطاء يقول سمعت أبا القاسم عبد الله بن محمد بن سلمة يقول سمعت أبا علي الحسن بن أحمد يقول سمعت أبا محمد أحمد بن محمد الأديب يقول سمعت الأسمعي يقول الحكاية كالثوب الوشي. That an incident is like a beautified garment. So the meaning of washi is explaining it. Al-muhassan, al-mujammal bil-alwani wal-nuqush wal-zakhrafa. It's embellished, it's decorated, it's adorned with different colors, with buttons, with ornaments. Well-isnadu laha kat-tiraz. And the sanad is like the brand, the make of it. وَهُوَ الْعَلَمْ لِلثَّوْبِ. So imagine you get a very beautiful garment, but it's not, if you male, it's not a shiyaka, or if you're female, it's not bidun ism. But here you can see now, it because of the brand. So the sanad is what is the brand. Now you'll pay so much extra just because it got that logo on it, isn't it? وإليك هذا الخبر الصغير لتعرف منه منزلة الإسناد عند المتقدمين. He's saying that here's a small incident just so that you can understand the status that the earlier scholars would give to a sanad. حتى في الكلمة الواحدة عند اللغويين. Even if it was for just one letter amongst the لغويين. جاء في تاج العروس للزبيدي في مادة نوفة. So under the words nawafa, عند تفسير كلمة النوف. So now it's under the root letters nawafa is explaining the word nauf. ما نصه قال الأزهري. Now look at Azhari. He's explaining this here. قرأت في كتاب نسب إلى مؤرج السدوسي غير مسموع. Can you see? He went to this extent. Yeah, it's in a book, it's in a dictionary, but he's making sure to clarify that it's attributed to this person. I don't have this here. I don't have this book through isnad. لا أدري ما صحة النوف. So فمن أجل نقل كلمة واحدة في الكتاب قد تكون تلك الكلمة من أصدق الثابت المنقول عن قائلها. Most definitely that it could be very authentically proven from the person who uttered the statement. But then too جعل الأزهر تعالى يتحفظ من إسنادها إلى قائلها. He exercised caution and he made sure to mention that about the sanad. إذ لم يكن الكتاب أي النسخة التي وقعت إليه إثبات السماع لذلك الكتاب من مؤلف فيه. He made sure to clarify that there's no sima' of this kitab. والسماع من الإسناد. السماع, listening to the whole book is like إسناد. بل قد دخل الاهتمام بالإسناد ورواية العلم من طريقه إلى كتب الطب وتاريخه. Even in medical journals, even in the books on the history of medicine, there too you find إسناد. So can you see? That is why in the heading, what did Shaykh Abd al-Ghuddah said? Not only for Islamic books, isn't? He said, اشتراط الإسناد في تلقي جميع العلوم الإسلامية وغيرها. Even other sciences, they also relied on isnad. You can see even doctors, those in the medical fields, they would rely on sanad. فهذا طبيب النطاس أبو بكر الرازي محمد بن زكريا شيخ الطب في عصره. So this here is like one of the most senior doctors of his time. He passed away in the year 311. أدخل الإسناد في بعض منقولاته في الطب. He's quoting from other doctors, but he quotes it with a sanad. So how you like that? في كتابه الحاوي المطبوع في 23 مجلدة. His book حاوي, which is printed in 23 volumes. فكان في ذلك توثيق وتعريف بمن نقل عنهم. So this was like a stamp, and it was giving information on who they are quoting from. وافقهم وخالفهم. And it done is whether they agree with the statement or whether they disagree. Then too they would mention the sanad. فأحسن وأفاد. They done very good in doing this here. إن هذا الموقف الدقيق بشأن الإسناد في نقل الكلمة اللغوية وفي نقل تلك الكلمات الطفيلية الحمقاوية وفي منقولات الطب وغيره ليدل كل الدلالة على موقع الإسناد والسماع عند أولئك العلماء السابقين رحمه الله. Now he's coming to the conclusion of mentioning all of this, that if you have this kind of concern for a sanad in quoting the definition of a word, and if they gave so much care to a sanad in quoting incidents about people who actually acted in a foolish way and immaturely, and even in books on medicine, then this here will clearly demonstrate to you very, very emphatically the status of isnad and sama according to those ulama who came before. فهم لا يقبلون خبرا أو كلمة أو نادرة من نوادر الحمقى بدون إسناد. They don't accept anything without a sanad. فكيف شأن منهم إذن بتلقي الحديث الشريف أو التفسير? If they don't accept a statement of another human being without a sanad, and if they're criticizing others because they didn't mention the sanad, how will they ever accept a statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How will they ever accept something from the hadith if there's no sanad? إن علماءنا المتقدمين رضي الله عنهم نقلوا لنا هذا الدين وعلومه بضبط وإتقان يضاهي ضبط الآلات المسجلة اليوم. He's saying that our ulama, the earlier scholars, they transmitted deen and the sciences and the branches of deen with such precision and total professionalism, which is on par with modern recorders. Like, if you record something, then it will be the exact same white you're quoting, it will be quoting verbatim. Can you record something, like now I'm giving this lecture, after this lecture, can I say, I didn't say that in the lecture? No, it will be, it's definitely, I said it because it's word for word is being quoted. So he's saying that they had so much precision, so much professionalism that it actually resembles, it's on par with modern day recorders. وأدوا الأمانة العلمية لمن بعدهم خير أداء. They fulfill this responsibility, this academic responsibility in the best way بهذه الأسانيد التي هي معايير القبول والرد والتصحيح والترجيح. Through these asanid, which became the standard, the benchmark, the metrics for understanding, for accepting and rejecting, and for authenticating and for giving preference. If you look in the second footnote, وقد درج كثير من العلماء اليوم عند قراءة الكتاب الحديث المسند على قراءة المتن دون الإسناد فيه. That some ulama now, that when they read even a book with a hadith book with the sanad, they just don't even read the sanad. They just turn a blind eye on the sanad and go straight to the text. They don't give any consideration to the sanad. نظرا منهم إلى أنه لا حاجة إلى ذلك بعد تحقق صحة المتن. He's saying that they assume that now what's the need of the sanad, because now the text has been authentically proven. So you got Sahih al-Bukhari, why must we read now all the sanad? Let's just read the matn, go to Sahabi's name in the text. They don't give any consideration to the chain of transmission. وقد غرت الأسانيد في الأزمان المتأخرة مهملة قراءتها. That asanid in today's times, in the latter times, is becoming such that no one even wants to read it. مملولا سماعها. In fact, when others they become bored when listening to it. فغدت مهجورة من مجالس العلم. In the majalis of ilm even. So in academic settings, then two people don't want to quote the sanad. فإذا قرأ المدرس إسناد حديث تعثر فيه وأخطأ في قراءة الأسماء. Even if a teacher is to be quoting the sanad, he'll be making mistakes, he'll be slipping, he won't be pronouncing the words properly. So can you see that he say فينشأ طالب الأمس شيخ اليوم, that the student of yesterday is pushed into the position of becoming the sheikh of today. وهو لا يدري من ذلك لقيرا ولا قطميرا. He doesn't know anything about asanid. So therefore we should revive this year of getting asanid. If you, like I said, if you're doing a course which is postgraduate, then you must mention the sanad. In fact, you must memorize asanid as well, and forget sanad in even general books. Make it this practice of getting asanid also in general books. So inshallah, we continue from page 151 next week, inshallah. I wanted to ask that from all of you, who of you is to be present in the Ma'alim Irshadiyya Durus in December? Did Arabs who are not Muslims also rely on sanad for other sciences? Yes, so the Arabs also, that is why when you're quoting, many times you're quoting the asanid for poetry even goes beyond the Prophet ﷺ, goes earlier than the Prophet ﷺ. For that also they had, because you must remember that the Arabs, they had this genealogy and they were quoting, like, you know, even their forefathers, they knew the entire sanad, what we could call it, that right up until Adam alayhi salam, they knew the entire lineage. So for everything, they would quote asanid. Okay, so quite a few of you were present. What I was thinking is that I don't know if it's because now to take out 1 hour might become difficult, but if it will be appreciated by you, then as and when I get time, maybe just to tell you, like from where we stopped in Ma'alim Irshadiyya, like maybe then to tell you what's the next incident about, or maybe to tell you the next few points which comes, like say for example, I'm going somewhere and I get stuck in traffic, for example, then in that time I can tell you maybe 1 page, or maybe sometimes waiting for the wife and kids to get done, maybe then on the WhatsApp group, maybe put another page, like that, slowly, like that, then at least you get done. But that's if you're interested in it. If you do it, you'll get the book with the sanad. You'll get Ma'alim Irshadiyya with the sanad, because we just mentioned to you about asanid. If you're interested, I don't want to now be wasting time. I'd rather I read Quran in the time if it won't be appreciated, isn't it? But then, alhamdulillah, we try to love life in such a way that we don't waste time. So even if you have to go somewhere and you're getting in traffic, then you read Quran. If you're walking, then you read Quran. My practice also send voice notes. But now to take out time and to commit to the time, I wouldn't want to give you a time slot and then I have to make an excuse. Sorry, I can't make it. If you know the quality of Ismail alayhi salam, إنه كان صادق الوعد. So if I give you a time, I want to stick to the time, but because now I cannot commit, unfortunately, due to my own weakness. If there's barakah in time, definitely I would be able to commit to it, but because there's no barakah in our time, I can't commit. So I was thinking like this, and it also then makes that WhatsApp group beneficial. Otherwise, the WhatsApp group is just now being used. Recording is posted. 10 minutes for the next lesson. That's all the WhatsApp group is being used for. So if you do that, then at least maybe that WhatsApp group will become beneficial. So if you all will, if that will be something of interest to you, then that's what I could do. What about those who were not present for it before? Yeah, so if you are not present, then you can just listen to the recordings, inshallah. Okay, so if you are interested, then that's what I'll start to do for Ma'alim Irshadiyya from time to time as I get a chance. Maybe even if I don't read the entire text, or maybe like at least a 2-minute clap, 3-minute clap, 2-minute clap, but all these drops, our glass will get full. Shaykh Awama himself mentioned, isn't that ma la yudraku, you'll memorize that. If you can't get it in the everything, then you don't leave it out entirely. So if you can't do Ma'alim Irshadiyya, if I look at my schedule now, how my schedule will be towards the end of the year, then it's like I'm just thinking that I don't know how will it be possible to finish Ma'alim Irshadiyya. So this is one thing which I thought about. So where are the recordings posted? So inshallah, the siblings of ilm, you can just contact them and then they'll arrange for you the recordings for it. And then that way, at least the WhatsApp group can also be beneficial, that you are on that WhatsApp group. Then every time I get a little bit chance, maybe tell you what's the next thing which is read in the kitab, maybe quote even if it's one paragraph. And it also becomes such that it's easy to digest them. Instead of having a whole 1 hour lesson, now it becomes digestible so you can then practice upon it. So inshallah, I'll just have to confirm. It was a thought of mine. Now I'll go into everything I do at mashwara of my asatidah. So if my asatidah give me permission, then that's what I'll do, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so you can just email them and inshallah they'll give you the recordings.